The city never sleeps, but neither does Daniel Montenegro. From the window of his 45th floor penthouse, he watches the horizon of twinkling lights, the tiny cars moving in an endless stream. In his right hand, a glass of whiskey with ice balances, with slight movements of his wrist. To his left, the phone glows with a notification. Congratulations, Montenegro. The deal has been a success, a message that should fill you with satisfaction. But inside, there's a disturbing silence. At 38 years old, Daniel has built an empire in the corporate world. A ruthless executive, known for closing impossible deals and for his ability to make even the most skeptical trust him. Only to, at the last moment, make sure everything ends in his favor. It's not illegal. It's not technically immoral. It's just how the game works. And he has played better than anyone. However, as he stands there alone with the city at his feet, he feels a strange sensation, empty, as if all the weight of his victories were not enough to fill him. The elevator opens with a metallic sound, and the figure of Laura, his personal assistant, emerges with her characteristic efficiency. He knew Daniel better than anyone. 10 years working together, seeing closely every decision, every strategy, every fall and every rise. Everything ready for tomorrow's meeting? Daniel asks without taking his eyes off the city. Yes, but there is something I need to talk to you about. Laura's tone is not usual. There is a pause, a slight tremor in his voice. I'm going to resign. Daniel slowly turns his head, no expression visible. Give up? Yeah. Silence settles between them like an invisible barrier. I don't understand. You can't be dissatisfied with the salary. We pay you more than any other company. It's not about money. Daniel. Laura takes a deep breath and looks into his eyes with an expression he had never seen in her before, sadness. I don't want to become what you are. For the first time in a long time. Daniel doesn't know what to answer. That night, after Laura leaves, Daniel lies on the black leather couch in his office, his mind reeling. It wasn't the first time someone criticized him. In the business world, people are driven by interests. The important thing is to always be one step ahead. If you are weak, they devour you. He learned it since he was a child. His father had been a noble man, a small businessman who trusted the word of people, who believed in honesty as an unbreakable value. A man who ended up bankrupt because in the real world, values don't pay the bills. Daniel remembers the day he saw his father lose everything. He remembers him sitting in the kitchen with his head in his hands, while his mother, more pragmatic, told him bluntly, "This world is not for the naive." That day, Daniel made a pact with himself. He would not repeat his father's fate. It wouldn't be weak. That's how he became who he is today. In his glass-walled office, Daniel reviews last quarter's metrics. The figures are spectacular. The company is at its best. On paper, there is no reason to question anything, but the reflection of his face on his computer screen tells him another story. Deep down, he knows that his success is not due to his talent alone. It is due to your willingness to do what others would not do. To cross gray lines, to convince, manipulate, and, when necessary, sacrifice. Your phone vibrates. It's a message from one of your partners. Great job, Montenegro. As always, relentless. Implacable. That word echoes in his mind as he turns off the screen. For the first time, he wonders if that's really the highest praise anyone can receive. The night is dense. The air seems heavier than normal in Daniel's office. The digital clock on his desk reads 10:47 p.m. The day was over for almost everyone in the building, except him. But something had changed. On her glass table, Laura's resignation letter remained open. His handwriting was impeccable, precise, as his work had always been. I don't want to become what you are. That phrase haunted him. It repeated itself in his head like an incessant echo. Daniel had heard a lot of criticism throughout his career. That he was ruthless, that he had no scruples, that he only cared about results. But he had never cared. However, this time was different. Lavra was not just anyone. She had been with him from the beginning. 10 years of absolute loyalty. And now he was leaving not for money, not for better opportunities, but because he didn't want to become what he was. That idea was unbearable to him. The next morning, Daniel arrives early at the office. Earlier than usual. I needed answers. Lavra is no longer at her desk. His absence is an uncomfortable void in the place. Where is Lavra? He asks the receptionist. He left early. He said he had personal matters to attend to. Daniel feels a pang of irritation. Is that easy? Is it that simple to leave after 10 years? He leaves the building and gets into his car. The driver looks at him in the rearview mirror, waiting for orders. But Daniel doesn't say anything right away. Then, with a firm voice, he orders, "Take me to the coffee shop on 12th Street." It's a small, discreet place where Lavra used to go on her days off. When he arrives, he finds her sitting by the window, with a coffee in her hand and an open book. As if the weight of the world was no longer on his shoulders, Daniel enters, without asking permission, and sits in front of her. "It's not like you to leave things like that." Lavra calmly closes the book. "It's also not like me to stay in a place that is destroying me." Daniel looks at her, bewildered. "Destroying you? What the hell does that mean?" She sighs and looks at him with a mixture of compassion and firmness. "I didn't realize it at first, but over time, I found myself making decisions that I didn't like, using excuses that seemed unacceptable to me before, treating people like numbers, turning cold, like you." The words hit hard. "I always thought you understood how this worked." He responds with a slight sarcastic smile. "The real world is not a place for the naive." Lavra looks at him sadly. "And at what point does the real world give us permission to be our worst selves?" Silence. Daniel had never been one to be left without an answer, but this time, I didn't have one. That night, back at his apartment, Daniel pours himself another whiskey. He knows he's trying to drown something in that glass, something uncomfortable. He lies back on the couch, looks at the ceiling, and lets Laura's sentence wash over him again. "I don't want to become what you are." Why did it affect him so much? After all, what was wrong with being like him? He was successful, powerful, feared and respected. But then he remembers something. Something I had buried a long time ago. The last words his father said to him before losing his entire business. "Daniel, no matter what you achieve in life, if one day you look in the mirror and don't recognize yourself, you will have lost more than money." That night, Daniel stays up longer than usual. Something inside has broken. An invisible chink in your armor of success. And for the first time in many years, he begins to wonder if he has been playing the wrong game. The night at the office is long and silent. The whiskey in Daniel's glass has been diluted with ice, but he is still there. Not drinking it. He knows he's on the verge of something. A crack has opened in his mind, and memories begin to leak like water into a dam about to break. The city lights twinkle through the glass windows, but he doesn't see them. He is trapped in another time. Close your eyes and go back to the beginning. He is 11 years old. He is sitting in his father's small office, surrounded by messy papers and boxes of old documents. The place smells of coffee and printer ink. His father is on the phone, his voice shaking. "Please, Mr. Gonzalez, I need a little more time. I promise you, I will pay every penny." Daniel doesn't fully understand what's happening, but he sees his father's face. She sees him collapse minutes later. The man hangs up the phone and sits in the chair with his eyes closed, massaging his temples. "Dad. That is everything okay?" The man opens his eyes and smiles weakly. "Of course, champion. We're just going through a tough time." But his mother's voice comes from the kitchen, with a different tone, a difficult moment that never ends. Because you trust people too much. Daniel turns around and sees his mother leaning against the doorframe, with her arms crossed. I told you not to trust Gonzalez. But you always believe in the goodwill of others. The father sighs. I can't live distrusting everyone. Clara, I don't want to be that kind of person. And what do you prefer to be? A good man or a successful man? Silence falls over the room. That question, although Daniel does not know it yet, will remain engraved in his mind for the rest of his life. The days pass, and the tough time never gets better. One afternoon, Daniel comes home to find his mother packing boxes. His father is sitting on the couch, silent. Let's go, says his mother without looking at him. Where to? To a smaller place. Your father lost the business. Daniel feels a lump in his throat. He sees his father with his head lowered, with the same expression he had that day in the office. He doesn't understand why, but something inside him hardens. That night, his mother sits next to him in bed and speaks to him in a low, serious voice. I don't want you to end up like him, Daniel. Like, Dad, yes, too confident, too soft. In this world, people don't respect good people. They respect the strong. Daniel nods, without saying anything. That was the night he decided he would never be like his father, would never trust too much. He would never show weakness. He would never allow himself to lose. Years later, when he was 24, Daniel faced his first real test in the business world. It was his first big deal, one that would define his career. The negotiations had been long and difficult. The other party was hesitant, worried about the risks. And then, Daniel did something that would change everything. He altered a report. Not a big lie, just a small adjustment to the numbers. Enough for investors to feel safe. He didn't hesitate. And it worked. They signed the contract. And Daniel's rise began. That night, as he celebrated with a glass of wine, he remembered his mother's words. What would you rather be? A good man or a successful man? He looked at his reflection in the window and knew the answer. Since then, he never looked back. Back in his office, Daniel opens his eyes. Memories have settled in his mind like pieces of a puzzle he never wanted to put together. For the first time, his father's voice returns clearly. No matter what you achieve in life, if one day you look in the mirror and don't recognize yourself, you will have lost more than money. Daniel gets up and walks to the mirror in his office. He stands there, staring at his own reflection. Man who sees is strong, successful, feared. But a question filters into his consciousness, more insistent than ever. Did you really win? The air in the city seems thicker. Daniel walks down the hallway of his office with firm steps. But inside him, something is falling apart. The scandal broke out just a few hours ago. The media headlines leave no room for doubt. Daniel Montenegro's corporation involved in fraud and manipulation of figures. The phones haven't stopped ringing. Investors demand answers. His partners, who previously supported him without hesitation, now view him with suspicion. In the meeting room, some of his closest colleagues coldly confront him. We need a damage control strategy, Daniel. This can sink us. This is not the time to lose your mind, he answers, with his usual tone of authority. But as he says those words, he feels like his world, the one he built with so much effort, is shaking beneath his feet. Lavra was right. What have I become? That night, instead of locking himself in his office as usual, Daniel takes the wheel of his car and drives without a fixed destination. He can't go home. He can't face the calls. Without thinking too much, he ends up at a small cafe on the outskirts of town, a place I hadn't been to in years. Inside, a man with a graying beard and calm eyes watches him from a table. I never thought I would see you here again. Daniel. It's Miguel. An old friend from university. They used to share the same dreams of greatness. But while Daniel rose in the corporate world, Miguel took a different path. He left business to study psychology and, over time, dedicated himself to helping others face their personal crises. Why did you do it, Miguel? Why did you give up? Everything? I didn't give up anything, says Miguel with a serene smile. I just realized I was climbing the wrong ladder. Daniel leans over the table, his eyes tense. So tell me, why do the worst people seem to succeed? Why do those who play dirty always go further? Miguel looks at him for a moment and then says, because the world rewards cunning and ambition. But what they never tell you is the price you pay for it. Daniel frowns. The price? Yeah, I will. Explain it to you with a concept from Carl Jung. The shadow. Miguel rests his hands on the table and continues. We all have a shadow, Daniel. It is the part of us that we repress, what we do not want to accept about ourselves. Envy, insecurity, fear, guilt. Daniel crosses his arms, uncomfortable. And what does that have to do with me? That you don't control your shadow. You are his prisoner. The phrase resonates in the silence of the cafe. You believe that power makes you free, but in reality, you are a slave to the image you created. You've built an empire, but what's inside you? Daniel remains silent. Miguel continues. How many times have you ignored your own conscience? How many times have you justified doing the wrong thing because that's the way the world works? The words pierce Daniel's armor. For the first time in years, he feels a weight on his chest that he can't ignore. He rubs his temples. So tell me, what am I supposed to do now? Miguel observes him with a mixture of compassion and severity. It's not about doing something. It's about facing what you've been avoiding your whole life. Daniel looks down. In his mind, his mother's voice echoes, do you want to be good or successful? But now, another question appears in his mind, one he had never allowed himself to ask. What if there is another way? Daniel doesn't remember how he got to his apartment. All he knows is that his body weighs as if he had been carrying tons of stone. Miguel's words continue to echo in his mind. You do not control your shadow. He collapses on the couch, staring at the ceiling. For the first time in years, he has no answers. For the first time in years, the silence is deafening. He falls asleep without realizing it. And then, dream. He's in a meeting room. The wooden table is the same, one you've seen at hundreds of meetings. The cold light from the ceiling illuminates the faces of those present, but there are no businessmen or partners. Sitting in front of him are different versions of himself. At the end of the table, a boy no older than 8 is playing with a toy car. It's him when he still believed in his father's goodness. To his right, the young man who made his first dirty deal looks on arrogantly, adjusting his tie. To his left, the adult Daniel, the one who sacrificed friendship for ambition, drums his fingers on the table impatiently. Everyone watches him, everyone judges him. Who are you really? Asks a voice. Daniel tries to respond, but can't find the words. The boy looks at him sadly. Mom said that the world belongs to the strong. Whispers the young Daniel with a cynical smile. The adult Daniel interrupts him with a dry laugh. And he was right. Look at us now. We are at the top, but the boy frowns. Are we really at the top? A dead silence fills the room. Daniel feels a lump in his throat. For the first time, he realizes what he has been avoiding all his life, that it's not morality that stops him. It's fear. The fear of being seen without masks. The fear that, without success, there will be nothing left in him. The fear of facing oneself. Daniel wakes up suddenly, breathing heavily. Sweat runs down his forehead. He sits up in bed, rubbing his temples. For the first time, he doesn't think about strategies, about money, about power. Just think about the question that still resonates in your mind. Who are you? Really? And he knows that he will not be able to continue living without finding the answer. The morning comes with a strange silence, not the tense silence before a corporate war, not the cold silence of loneliness, a different silence. Daniel looks in the mirror. His dark circles reveal the internal battle he has waged, but his gaze has something new, clarity. Today you will make a decision that will change your life. And for the first time, he doesn't feel afraid. The meeting room is full. His partners observe him with suspicion. The media scandal continues to grow, and the only solution seems to be to do what they have always done: manipulate the narrative, divert attention, find a scapegoat. Daniel breathes deeply. We are not going to hide it. Let's tell the truth. A murmur runs through the room. That would be financial suicide, says one of the directors. It's the right thing to do, Daniel answers. For the first time in his life, he is not calculating the reactions. You are not playing chess with the emotions of others. He's just saying what he knows he needs to say. The media is quick to destroy it. Executive admits unethical practices in his company. From success to failure, Daniel's empire in crisis. Hero or traitor? His partners see him as an enemy. The world calls it failure. But when Daniel walks into his office for the last time, he feels something he's never experienced before. Peace. It is not the peace of the one who wins a war, but that of the one who finally stops fighting against himself. Daniel does not abandon his ambition. He doesn't give up on his dreams, but he no longer sees success as an accumulation of power or money, but as an integration of what he really is. Will build again, but this time, without getting lost in the process. The video ends with a final reflection. Are you building real success or just hiding your shadow? Silence. Black screen. End.